So when I started this, I didn't really have any idea of what I was doing. I just thought I wanted something sort of that went around in a kind of a curve. And then while I was looking at pictures, I saw one which had this outcropping that somebody was standing on that I thought was really cool. And then suddenly the Google image search page changed and then I could never find it again. So we started again from scratch. And what I decided is it's probably best that I just try and sort of sculpt each bit with shading and then try and do the lines. But I also needed to do it in layers. So we've got 5 different layers of mountains and the foreground here. So those back 2 are a layer, then the middle one, and then we've got 3 on that sort of mid to foreground on the left, and then we've got the bit in front that I thought would be mostly grass and some small rocks. And I made some shading, and then we put in an extra shade in each of the shading. So we've got 4 colors basically on the background mountains, and then we're trying to make some shapes out of the shapes that were made with the shading. Trying to make some lined shapes that sort of made sense with what happened in the shading that looked okay. And this took a while. I hit on this sort of not quite diamond pattern, so it's like T shapes to make rocks, and I was like, yeah, that works. Let's use that on every sort of edge bit, which was possibly a mistake because that didn't really work by the time I got back to the front. But, you know, we used it for a while and it kind of worked. And then we also ended up having some sort of slightly open shapes on what would have been the front side, which that didn't really work out either. But we'd fix all that later on. I'm like, well, this bit in the front here doesn't make sense, so let's just add some more rocks. Instead of, you know, making it drop off into nothing, I kind of need to make it a shape. So I just ended up keep putting in a bunch more rocky bits and then refining those as you do. This carries on for a while. This is the first of those 3 mid foreground. I don't know how you describe it. Mountains. Doing the same sort of thing. Trying to make actual line shapes out of the shading shapes. And then refining those. And what I decided was basically, by the time I was done with this, was that was far too much detail. And I didn't like it. And it didn't really work with what we had in the front. So, after reshading everything according to the lines that we had in there, I decided, we should probably calm that down a bit. I tried putting in the grass in the front here. I also decided I didn't like that in the end, but we'll get back to that. Because, you know, grass takes a little while. Just outlining that edge. So I start with the grass brush and then basically outline over the top of that in shapes. And then I thought, you know what? I don't like these little rocks. Let's put a couple of big rocks on the side. And then maybe some more slightly bigger rocks in there as well. And at this point I was still sticking with the grass. And I think it's probably around now that I was like, I don't like the amount of detail in the background. There's too much detail. It's just too much. I'm gonna have to go back over and refactor that. It looks weird. We're gonna have to reshape some stuff. I like what's happening in the background right-hand mountain. The rest of it is just, it's too busy. And then I don't like that we've got these other faces that basically don't have detail in, but still have like wavy shapes. Didn't make sense to me. So we go in and refactor it all. We make sure everything has an edge. There's no just wavy shapes. All of those have edges. And less detail in the detail sides. Still some, but less. So everything needed refactoring again. And eventually I decided this bit in the front of this mountain, that needs to be a separate mountain. And with a bit of space in between. Because originally I was trying to stick with the sort of the curve thing, going from these three in front into those two in the middle. But then I wasn't sure what to do with sort of the bottom of them, and even having the fog in didn't really work, so we just put another mountain in, and that kind of worked out. But I had to have that on a separate layer so that we could have a little bit of fog behind it as well. It's more separation. So that's what we're doing here, and then we've got to refactoring these front ones. This all took some time, as you can imagine. And it was about now that Silksong came out, and the grass wasn't really working for me. And I was like, you know what? I really like their moss. Their moss really works for me. After trying to put it all in and shading and making a bunch of dots to make it look like moss, which is basically how I could see that they'd done it in Silksong. It was obviously not exactly the same, because I'm not Team Cherry, but it was kind of working. It's a bit bright at this point, it gets muted. There was something still not quite right. So I had a look at real moss, and I had another look at the reference I had for the Silksong. I was like, there should be gaps. There should be some more gaps in this. So I ended up taking out some of the things and putting in bottoms to them instead of just having the tops. And then I had another look and I was like, you know what's missing? Detail in this rock. And I tried to do some kind of pattern on it, and that really wasn't working. So I was like, I just need to add in more rocks. Add in more rocks, like the big ones, but smaller. Just sort of make it layered. So that's what we ended up doing. And it kind of worked. And at this point, it's kind of working. It's kind of all right. But there's something still missing. Also, it was a bit bright green, so having looked at actual moss, I'm like, there's all sorts of different colours of moss. I can make that way more yellow to sort of fit in with the background. And you know what? Maybe we should put some moss in the background. That was a lot of dots. That's a lot of dots up on the side of these mountains. Just a lot of dots. It's the same sort of green on the lightest two shades, and then we switched to more of a brown on the darker two shades, because both sides should have moss. It doesn't only grow in the light, right? So, and also there's going to be different light in different times of day. But it would look weird if it was the same colour on both sides. It's not really noticeable that it's a different colour, because it's a different shade that it's on the background of. But it fits better that it's browner in the shadows. And then I was like, there's still something missing. You know what? What if we put in some sunlight? So we did. Picked up one of the yellow colours and just put in a bunch of sunlight. After this was finished in Procreate, I ported this into Photoshop, moved all the sunlight under the line work, because at the moment it's going in on the top. So separated it all out into whichever mountain it lives on, put it under the line work, and then I took another 3 days and put shading that you're never going to see at the size that it's in on the cards on all of the mountain moss. All of the background mountain has shading on that moss, and it's a lot tidier than it looks here. I don't know if it notices in the final, but I know, and that's the important thing. So there you have it, the last of the locations finally done.